Greetings, everyone. We are live. Welcome to the Turning Point. And how are you guys doing today, Vandel and David?
Doing good.
All
Doing
good?
good.
Doing great. Yeah. Great to be back as always.
Yep.
I just want to point out Versan couldn't join us today. Well, he has been a very busy recently, so he's going to go back on the next Monday. Sometimes it's difficult to coordinate with the four of us. And sometimes, like last week, it was my fault, and this week is actually Versan, but it's just that we have a very busy agenda. So we're doing our best
Mhm.
to keep it up, but expect next Monday he will be here as well. I see we have a lot of comments already, and I think we should be starting to address something that has caused a lot of noise in the community. And
Yep.
well, I do have a lot of messages. People are getting very confused, and that's about the title of today's live stream, right? So it's about Ripple's stablecoin, because there has been some rumors that it will replace XRP. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. I don't want to point out fingers, but I have seen a lot of misinformations about this topic and also emotional investors. So, who
Mhm.
wants to start, David or Vandel? It's up to you.
Yeah, I have so I actually was at in XRP Vegas here in 2024. The Digital Chamber of Commerce put on an event, and one of my subscribers, a guy named Zach, had an extra ticket, and this was a big deal because these tickets were almost 2 grand a pop. Anyway, he had brought me, and wow, what an amazing gift that was, truly. But needless to say, the thing is this. I was there and I had recorded a little clip, and this question had come out in a big way. Brad Garlinghouse was on stage, and it was Michael Arrington that was interviewing him. And he asked the question. He said, "Listen, a lot of conjecture is coming out about RLUSD and its role in the Ripple XRP ecosystem and how it's going to impact." And Brad's response was very quick, and it was very straightforward. And he basically said, "Listen, for all those who think that we are going to drop XRP as a utility asset that we are using in this space, they're missing the plot. They're missing the plot." And that gave a that was a and that thing went viral. I recorded that. I uploaded it to my YouTube. I wasn't really on X at that time, and XRP dropped a little bit. He edited the thing, and it just went crazy, went all over the place. And then I eventually uploaded the full video clip. And the thing I would say about it is this: we have seen a direct correlation with various stablecoins and other assets in this space. One primarily, of course, as we know, is Tether and Bitcoin. And it just amazes me that Tether, as Tether increases, the price of Bitcoin increases, and then it's just a symbiotic relationship there. Another one, USDC and Ethereum. I do believe RLUSD is going to be utilized to provide some significant liquidity into this space, and how it will be employed in terms of, like, institutions actually having some funds that are backed by securities. Now, remember, RLUSD is going to be backed by US treasuries. Now, I don't find it too much of a coincidence that around the same time you're watching US treasuries being tokenized on the XRP ledger. Isn't that quite amazing at the same time? And of course, other US dollar denominated assets that are going to back it 1-to-1. Now, just recently, we've heard that Ripple has now minted 350,000. They did one $250,000 block and another 100,000 block, which is absolutely a drop in the bucket when you consider the multiple billions that are being released in stablecoins right now. And so for me, I do not see this as a threat to XRP and the XRP ecosystem, but actually as probably one of the biggest blessings that we could see. And certainly it seems like they're forging ahead. Now, having said that, there are some smart contracts out there offering people exposure to RLUSD, and I would just caution against that right now, because from what I can tell, it is not publicly released as of yet. They have minted some, but I do not believe that the contracts are out there for the public to actually vest themselves in it. But yeah, I don't see it as a threat. I see it as providing big time liquidity to this space in a major way.
I agree.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, go ahead, Vandal. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is a positive thing for XRP. In simple terms, if I were to explain this in one sentence on how I view it and my perspective, and my message never changed. Never changes. I don't think anything's changing for XRP. I think this is positive news because ultimately the stablecoin will allow more liquidity to flow onto the XRPL. That's how I see it in the long term. Because what the stablecoin's doing is it's like bridging the traditional financial world to the digital and the future of finance. So with that little bridge there for more liquidity to come onto the XRPL, I think that's going to increase the utilization and use case usability of XRP. That's how I see it. So I see it as a positive thing for XRP, and I don't see it as some sort of financial instrument that's going to interfere or replace XRP. I just see it as more money and liquidity coming from the traditional financial world to the blockchain. And I think that's a good thing for XRP in terms of utility and applications, which means the more utility and adoption and use case, ultimately that leads to more value, which reflects in the price in the long run. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Let's put in simple terms, right? Ripple stablecoin, it's pegged to the US dollar versus XRP acts as a bridging mechanism. So they're not competing with each other in the same way that nobody ever made the following statement. Tether is actually competing with Bitcoin, right? You don't expect USDT to compete with XRP. It's just a complementary technology within an ecosystem. In the same way, let me make an analogy here, and my apologies for the ones that have Android. But let's say you have the ecosystem of Apple, which includes MacBooks, iPhones, iPads, and then you have the browser, which is the native browser for Apple, which is called Safari. And it would be like extremely incorrect to say that Safari is competing with iPhones, right? Safari is just a mechanism that exists inside the iPhone. And the more people have access to Safari, more likely they are to actually purchase Apple products. And you can argue that the same thing for real stablecoin on Ethereum Rails, which some people are very concerned for that. Well, if you have a Windows computer and you actually download Safari, which is actually possible, although it's not the native one, ultimately that might drive more liquidity to Apple products because now more people are trying on Safari. And that's very similar to what's going to happen with real stablecoin, right? It's going to enhance more liquidity to the ecosystem. It allows to on-ramp technology. Just in the case of more liquidity coming, and it's ultimately going to lead to more financial institutions that are going to later on the road adopt XRP. I think ultimately it's about not being an emotional investor. And I have also did this analogy. Some people are overthinking about XRP. You have to ask the basic questions. You don't have to be an expert on the subject. You don't have to be with a high IQ. Just have to ask the basic questions. And which questions are that? Well, which problem is XRP solving? Who is actually behind the XRP? Which company is making dozens or hundreds of partnerships that are actually utilizing XRP? And that goes for on-demand liquidity, that goes for live corridors through RippleNet. So we have to understand that asking the right questions, but not overthinking. The same way, if I made a tweet about this today. If you're gonna buy a property, you're also gonna ask the basic questions, right? What are the materials that this property is built of, or what's the price? What is the return that you can get out of this property? But you will not actually put down the walls because you suspect a drug dealer used to live there in the past and you might get problems with the police. That's the same of some people are actually overthinking too much. You have to actually chill and you have to trust the process, because if you understand the fundamentals, XRP is said to be at the core of the financial system. And actually, Ripple's technology, Ripple's stablecoin is just complementary. It's not gonna compete with XRP, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, the fundamentals haven't changed. So,
Yep. One other thing too is that, a lot of people that are spreading FUD in this space, get out there and they do it when when a lot of people are not very well aware or educated about what's happened. They take advantage of people's naivety, or they take advantage of their ignorance, and so they throw out some of this stuff. They throw as much against the wall as they can, hoping that some of it sticks, and some of it is like outright lies, or they try to confuse the issue with a big lack of understanding. One of them was, this weekend I was watching one of these, guys that we get on, that have come out, and I know Vandell, you know exactly who I'm going to talk about here, but I think it was like, Crypto Bellwether, whatever. And this guy was out there trying to explain tokenization, and you could literally hear, for anyone that really understands tokenization, you could see that this guy knows literally like little to none about genuine tokenization. And what he was doing, he was taking a charts from way back from when the digital asset space started. And he was basically saying, oh, well, there was only so much in circulating supply way back in 2013, 2015, 2017, 2021, and how, circulating supply of digital assets have appreciated, have increased. That is true. But so has the amount of money that has been pouring into this space. And this space has matured massively. And when you think of the global money supply, it is still drops in the bucket when you consider the literally tens of trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars that are in a lot of these assets that are now institutions are wanting to literally use real world assets being tokenized on these ledgers. RLUSD provides an opportunity and an on-ramp for real-world asset tokenization from financial institutions that want to provide their clients with access to these markets in a major way. And it's just when you get this kind of FUD out there, and you get it from people that are either intentionally, misleading people for whatever purpose or reason, and a lot of it is out there, or they are doing it out of their ignorance, it's actually sad, because a lot of folks are just getting like bits and pieces. You really need to go out there. I would encourage people constantly to get out there, genuinely research it, because I'll tell you what, you cannot base your confidence on somebody else's conviction. I don't care who it is or what. And a lot of people are out there spreading a bunch of falsehoods about this space. And I think a lot of folks are going to miss out on probably one of the biggest life-changing opportunities the world has ever seen as we transition into this new digital economy. That's kind of how I think about it. Don't listen to the FUD.
may I add something before you go, Ido? Before you hop on? Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I love what you said, David, because the circulation is increasing, right? All right. Well, in 1980, the global stock market value was approximately $2.5 trillion. Okay. That's funny because that's what the crypto is today, the crypto market value. So today, the global stock market value is a little over $15 trillion. Okay. So that just tells you how early we are, because we're right now about 2.5 trillion in total market cap. And in 1980, the stock market globally was about 2.5 trillion. So we're literally at the stages today in crypto land of 1980s. Okay. So as you said, even though, sure, circulation increases, the amount of money in the world is in the quadrillions. Okay. Eventually, this is all going digital. It's all coming onto the blockchain. This is the direction we're going in. If you can't figure this out, then you're going to get left behind. And I love what Ido said, that you don't have to have a high IQ to understand it, but I will interject and say, you probably won't understand this if you have a very low IQ. So you actually have to do the research, because that's where we're going. And regardless if there's 20,000 plus, cryptocurrencies and digital assets out there, the thing is this: at least more than 90 or 80% of them are going to go to zero and just disappear once regulatory frameworks or solidified and put into place. And all that money, the quadrillions of dollars, are going to make their way into specific assets within different sectors. So, I mean, if you calculate it using a metric like that, yeah, most of these digital assets that will be around, including XRP and a few others, they're going to be at prices that are beyond belief, in my opinion. We're just early right now.
And to piggyback on what you just said, because that is an excellent point about the stock markets. In fact, in the 1970s, you would have never met anybody who would think that just one company could be valued at the entire value of the entire stock market. And of course, that happened with Apple, because back in the 70s, right, 75, I think it was a $1 trillion market cap for the entire NYSE. And then by the time, Apple comes around, Apple alone was worth over 1 trillion. And now you got Nvidia and other ones. Individual companies are worth trillions of dollars. So this is where now from that perspective, when you start thinking about that, it is truly insane. That you would think that just by virtue of, circulating supply and this and that, it can't reach these valuations. People are not really looking down the road. They have no vision for what this space is genuinely representing. And I do believe you're right. They're going to get absolutely left behind. And it's mesmerizing to me that most people are just, are buying this line when we've already lived through some major technological changes that have in fact changed the way the world literally works. One of the things I love pointing out is our banking system. Look, in the 1980s, early 1990s, our banking system was perfectly okay globally, not reliant on the internet at all. Do you realize just a 24 or 40-hour global blackout in the internet would cause trillions of dollars of value to leave the financial sectors in major ways? That shows you the dependence we have gotten, on these current networks. And October 1st, just tomorrow we go into the SOFR system, for the overnight rates and stuff like that are going to be applied. July 1st of 2025, Basel III comes into play. We know the ISO 222 messaging standards and all of that. The infrastructure is being laid right out before us. And, when you think about that and you think about the relationships that, Ripple has with a lot of these international, organizations, IMF, BIS, of course, the ECB, the Federal Reserve, all these central banks, and they're out there laying the groundwork for, the central bank digital currencies. And the fact that it never has ever left the top 10 for market cap in the entirety of its existence, I think speaks volumes of what we can expect to see down the road. Now, is there risk involved? Yep, there's risk involved. But I'll tell you what, that's the whole point of investing, is you're taking calculated risk. You are not out there gambling. You're spending time educating yourself, like you so eloquently said there, Vandell, and you're looking down the road of what's coming. And yeah, there's a lot of naysayers. They don't want us to believe that the world's going to change that way, but it already has. We've seen it happen. So why is it so hard to believe? To me, it's not. To me, it's almost a given.
Totally agree. Some people even forgot what happened in previous cycles, right? You had things that initially they seemed impossible. And I can talk about Bitcoin hitting $60,000. Ethereum made all-time highs near to 4K. And if you would ask someone 5 years ago, they would say, well, that's impossible. But actually, that happened. And also XRP that did unbelievable gains in 2017 when it made a new all-time high at $3.84 in some Korean exchanges. So we just have to have patience, the same way that investors who held Amazon stocks, yes, it took some time. Price has fluctuated from $10 to $14, $20, then retraced back below $10. And then eventually it went above $3,000. I think it's just a matter of patience and understanding the fundamentals. And that brings us to the next topic that I want to cover here, which was the recent XRP spike, which was, I think, 6 or 7%. We went all the way almost to 67 cents. I don't know precisely, 66 dot something, right? And I would like to hear your thoughts on that, David and Vandel, and what you guys expect for the crypto markets, specifically for XRP, in the next coming weeks or months. You can choose the time frame that you wish.
So I think that one of the reasons why over the weekend we saw the spike is because of the news with RLUSD, but I also believe that I think a lot more people are looking at the impacts of an SEC appeal probably will be minimal, even if it does happen. We're on the home stretch here. We have like, what, 7 days for them to kind of make their decision. But I think even if they do file an appeal, it's not going to be like the first go around when they filed the lawsuit. When they filed the lawsuit, there was absolute ambiguity. Nobody knew what the court was going to decide when it came to XRP as, you know, an asset in and of itself, whether or not it was going to be a security. Of course, we know it was delisted from every U.S. exchange, save Uphold. I really do not believe that that's going to be the same go around this time, because of course it has clarity in the courts until another court would make a decision, you know, that would be that different. And I think most legal analysts have come out there and they say that the chances of the SEC actually succeeding in appeal are so low, primarily because, look, when Judge Annalisa Torres made her decision, she made it based on the Howey test. And so it wasn't an error in law. It was not an error in judgment. Just because they don't like the decision, that in and of itself is not how an appeal would be processed. You cannot bring any new evidence to trial, and that in the way in which this appeal will go through. So, you know, and by the way, if they did lose in Second Circuit, that would be such a crashing blow for the SEC. In fact, I think that as this space gets really adopted and we do get regulatory clarity in this next cycle, you know, with FIT 21, that's Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, the jurisdiction for the SEC, these assets, some of them can be pulled right out of their jurisdiction. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if a new regulatory body came into play that is a kind of a blend between the CFTC and the SEC or something like that in the United States. And that being said, it would also not surprise me that we literally would see an indices in and of itself for these digital assets, similar to what the NASDAQ is for tech stocks and things like that. And so I just see this space maturing more and more. Now, when you think about price, the only thing we can, because nobody has a crystal ball to see the future, but we can kind of get some indicators from the past. All right, so last go around, you know, XRP does a 1,200% return, right? With a freshly minted SEC lawsuit on it. And I always like to bring this up because it has no clarity whatsoever as to what was going to happen. Delisted from every U.S. exchange, still does a 12x. Well, a 12x from where we are right now is like what, $7 some cents. I mean, how many people don't think that XRP could hit 10, 50, maybe $20? Now, obviously, we don't know that for a fact. But if we were to look at past runs where we have seen that, you know, those are amazing gains from this point. Now, there are those who are out there saying, well, I'm never selling my XRP, and I don't hold that against people. But you have to remember, each individual has their own situation to deal with, right? Because I always bring it out. You never know. Some people need to cash out to pay off debt. Maybe they have, you know, someone in their family and they have high medical bills that needs to be paid and things like that. So I don't throw that out there. Long term, do I see XRP appreciating to 3, maybe even 4 digits way down the road? Yeah, I believe I do. I believe it has the potential to do that, especially when you consider the derivatives market where there's lots of, by the way, you want to go look up the open interest on XRP in the derivative markets. It is in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And it is truly phenomenal. And, we have seen some major market volume uptick for XRP and stuff like that. So do I see these 3 and 4 digit prices being available down the road? I do. But that's my opinion. That's what I view it as because of what I know this ecosystem, you know, in terms of what I've researched and what I can see it actually doing down the road. And there's a lot of conjecture out there, but in a bull run, even if it's only sentiment driven, I absolutely believe, hey, XRP could definitely do a 10, 12x in my opinion, you know, probably even more than that, considering in past bull runs, we've seen it do way beyond that. And even when it was under consistent pressure, like it was, to do 1,200% under that kind of pressure and not to leave the top 10 for market cap, that was phenomenal. So for me, that's kind of how I think of it going forward in price appreciation.
Love your thoughts, David. Vandel, please go ahead.
Yeah. In terms of a new regulatory body to regulate this space, I think that's inevitable. I think they're just they haven't laid it out yet for the public, but that's coming. For every new asset class comes new regulations. So for example, in 1980s, that's when the debt collateralized, investment banks started to create high yield vehicles with the bond market. Okay. And then they had to create more regulations around that. So same thing is going to happen with crypto and digital assets. It's not fully solidified yet. And whether it is or not is irrelevant, because that's where we're going. It's coming. As for price, okay, I never like to give price predictions because I really zoom out. And I don't do trend forecasting and all that stuff, but I look at where we're going and where we are in the cycle right now. So based on where we are, looking at various metrics and taking into account previous cycles as a roadmap, I think where we are in the cycle with this crypto and digital asset space, we're very early in the cycle. In the long term, from a long-term perspective, we're very early. And even from a short-term perspective, we're very early too, because the bull run is approaching and there's many different metrics to support that. We're still early right now. So in terms of short-term, so this bull run, this bull cycle, I said this on a channel of Nawadi, and I still hold my ground on this. I think that XRP will surpass its all-time high this cycle. So I don't know where it's going to go. At the end of the day, all markets and asset classes are driven by liquidity. Ever since 2009, the central banks created this thing called quantitative easing. Okay, that's why we have these 4-year cycles. It's driven by liquidity. Liquidity goes up, market prices go up. Asset prices go up. Liquidity goes down, markets go down. And it's been like that since 2009. So from a liquidity standpoint, I think XRP will pass its all-time high this cycle, I believe in 2025. Now, as for extremely high prices that we discuss occasionally, I think that's going to come with utility and applications and global adoption, because ultimately it's about utility that would drive its mainstream adoption globally, and that will reflect in the price. But for short term, I do think it's going to pass its all-time high. And I do agree with what David said. You do have to take some chips off the table, take profits based on your financial situation. Okay, at the end of the day, a lot of people will ask me, not a lot, but sometimes people ask me, hey, what should I invest in? How much should I invest? Well, that's like going up to a doctor and saying, hey, doc, can you give me a medication, without telling him what's your condition? Do you have a lot of money and you're trying to preserve what you have? Or do you have no money and you're trying to make more money? Do you have dependents? Do you have family members that rely on you? What's your age? What's your risk tolerance? Do you have the visceral in the stomach to deal with the volatility? Do you have the patience? You know, this is a deep question. You have to sit with yourself and ask yourself and answer those things, because depending how you answer all those questions would determine what's the best course of action for you in this asset class. One thing's for certain, that crypto and digital assets are here to stay. That's number one. The second thing is we're extremely early. That's number two. And the third thing is, if you really look at the numbers, compare them to every asset class in existence, digital assets and crypto have performed as the best asset class in existence with the best risk to reward ratio out there. So if you're looking for some sort of balance, you have to ask yourself, are you more interested in making more money, or are you more interested in protecting whatever you have? Because at the end of the day, you got to find the right balance, but there's no 100% being in the middle. You got to take more risk or you got to take less risk. And you got to ask yourself what's best for you. But I think we're going to see very high digits with XRP. once utility and global adoption kicks in, just how we saw with the stock market in the past. It's coming, you know, and but short term, I think we're going to pass the all-time high in 2025.
Great analogy, Vandel, and I love what you said about the doctor. And very often, you go to a doctor and they'll just prescribe you drugs, right? And they will not ask about your conditions. How is your sleep cycle going? How is your diet? What have you been eating? Have you been taking enough sun? How are your vitamin D levels? And well, if your doctor is just giving you drugs without asking these questions, you have a drug dealer, not a doctor. So have that in
Yes.
mind. And I think when it comes to XRP price, and let's talk about the overall crypto markets. I have said this many times. I'm not that optimistic on the short term, but I think 2025 is promising. Okay, so on the short term, what I mean on the short term, let's give a timeline here. Next, let's say 3 to 6 months. I do think we can have some retracements. I'm not saying it's impossible, even for Bitcoin to touch on the 50 or 60,000. Below 60, I think is very possible to happen. However, we have to be focused on the long term, right? And that's something that I have said yesterday in one of my videos. When you hold large sums of XRP, and let's say it goes up 3 or 4 or 5 cents, probably you guys know, right? Your portfolio just go out substantially. You know, it's if you hold a lot of XRP, 5 cents sometimes is a lot of money, and you can get extremely excited. So every time I try to just contain myself, and I say have to be calm because I am very aware that if I'm going to be extremely excited when XRP is going up, I'm going to be equally disappointed if we have a 3 or 4 cents retracement. So I try to control my emotions as much as possible, and I try to be neutral on the price actions. Yes, I can be slightly excited and slightly disappointed according to how the market sentiment is going, but I am always focused on the long term. I have asked the right questions about XRP, and that's why I trust the fundamentals. And then I just enjoy the process. So for me, it doesn't really matter how long it's going to take, perhaps 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or even 5 years. That's why it's great that you're going to make your investment strategy according to your needs. And I really love what you said, Vandel. You explained it so well. So every person has different needs, but ultimately, I think what makes a wise investor, it's patience. I don't think you need a degree or to be highly educated or to have a high IQ. I think you just have to have patience and exclude the high risk assets. Like, for example, if you're going to invest a lot of money in some meme coin and there's a market crash, there's a great chance that it will never make a comeback. And on the other hand, if you're going to buy some fundamental asset like XRP, which is basically working with every single financial institution that you can possibly think that is influential, I think you have greater chances of success. Now, that brings me to the next topic, which I wanted to discuss with you guys, that crypto markets right now are kind of sensitive because at any moment we can have some sort of black swan event that's going to it might be beneficial because it's going to clean up some bad actors on this space. And Brad Garlinghouse has said that he expects 99% of cryptocurrencies disappear, and perhaps that can be the turning point, right? That can be the moment that's going to separate what is merely speculative from what has real world use case. And that's the case for the few digital assets that we support, that we actually talk about, usually the X ones, such as XRP, XDC for tokenization, XLM, Velo, SHX. Well, there's a bunch of them, even though they are the minority. So would like to hear your thoughts on that, David and Vandel, because we can't close our eyes to a possible black swan event, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen black swan events take place in this space. I mean, when FTX totally imploded, most of the
Sorry,
retail market-
David is one of the biggest preppers ever, but I had to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Zero.
we had Verson and Vandal out to the house and really enjoyed them. And we were able to just kind of like, take our hair down and just let these guys, get to experience us and what we've done. And obviously, we've seen Black Swan events, like I was saying there in the past. In this space, hey, FTX was a big Black Swan that a lot of retail investors did not see coming. Now, did the powers that be see it coming? I think a lot did. Certainly, the SEC were not out there really protecting the retail investors because, it looked like everything was a-okay with all the meetings that SBF was having with Gary Gensler, this and that. They weren't pursuing the FTT token, which was absolutely issued under the classification what of a security was. It was issued like that. It was certainly an ICO. Everything was offshore. I mean, there was a lot that they knew that the retail market didn't know. And of course, it took the retail market by surprise and maybe even some of the institutional market Black Swan event. UST, I should say, the unfolding of that algorithmic stablecoin was another major Black Swan event that happened to this space that certainly impacted prices. Now, those wiped out some various, ecosystems in this space. And I do see that there are a lot of, things out there that are very hyped up. Of course, we see that with meme coins and things like that that have zero utility, zero real world utility. I mean, things that, will affect the world and how it operates on a global scale. We know that there are some that are going to be around. I do believe Bitcoin is certainly going to be around as a store of value. I do believe that. How long it will maintain top position, though, is another issue. Ethereum, I think with the smart contract platform, it has some competitors out there. Of course, we know Solana, Cardano, different ones like that. XRP, the XRP Ledger, XLM. These ones are providing, like XLM, with banking of the unbanked. Massive deal. The liquidity provisions that the XRP Ledger provides, things like that. But in the grand scheme, when you think there's 27,000 of these ecosystems all competing with one another for the same, dollars, I do not believe that there's going to be an equal distribution of those kind of things. And let me throw it out in this way from a real world thing. Most of us live in marketplaces around the world where we have, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of realtors out there selling real estate. Well, it's been statistically shown that usually, the top 1 or 2% get 80% of all the real estate volume, right? So it's a very small number of realtors that are pulling in the vast amount. The rest of them are practically starving, in terms of making any real impact in the markets. And you can take any market and you can get these stats out there. Well, with this digital asset space, I think you're going to see a very small minority taking the lion's share. And something I want to bring out is this: with MiCA regulations in Europe. Recently, we saw the collaboration of Aptos, Ripple, and Hedera Hashgraph, trying to build an infrastructure that would make it possible for institutions to enter into this space fully compliant with MiCA regulations. Well, if these ecosystems are the conduits that are going to make the transition, as smooth and as hassle-free as possible, you can almost be assured that they are going to see a lion's share of, volume, because these people will come on and they will be able to get used to these ecosystems, these networks, and be able to do real world asset tokenization on, by the way, only a few. Now I'll throw this out there too. There's not very many ecosystems that can handle the volume that the world really requires when it comes to real world asset tokenization. Certainly XRP Ledger is one, Hedera Hashgraph we know is another. Stellar, obviously another one out there. And there's a few other ones out there that can handle, but the majority can't. And when you think of liquidity, Vandal, you shared a very poignant example of a cousin that you have that, his portfolio was worth well over $1 million on paper, but he couldn't liquidate. Why? Because there's no liquidity for it, regardless. And the price is set by whatever the last price was. So that doesn't mean that, oh, well, they're going to walk away with millions just because it's no. Is there liquidity? Well, we know that in a lot of these ecosystems, the liquidity is very small. And you try to offload those things, you're not getting anywhere with it. You could be on paper worth so much. It's not going to make a difference. Liquidity is going to matter big time. And I do believe, maybe 10 to 30, maybe 50 will hold the lion's share of the entire global market when it comes to these digital assets. And the rest of them are all going to get washed out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that did happen to my cousin. He didn't invest too much. He put a small amount, just play money, into a cryptocurrency. Anyway, it shot his portfolio was reflecting a little over 1,500,000, but he couldn't sell it. And the reason was due to insufficient liquidity. So it is, you don't hear about those stories too often, but they are real. There's a lot of people that invest money in some cryptocurrencies, and it could say you're a millionaire on paper, but at the end of the day, if you don't realize or take those out of the market, then you're not worth anything. It's just stuck there, and you can't, even if you tried. So something to be cautious of. Somebody did say something pretty interesting in the comments here. So they said, better get your piece of the pie, because you can't fight the globalists that control all of the money. Pretty interesting, but good point. I actually do agree. At the end of the day, the architects of the system, the ones that control the monetary supply, the monetary system, the financial system, they have the control, okay? And they're way smarter than people give them credit for, even if they act dumb, okay? At the end of the day, all you can do is make the right choices and investments so that you create wealth, so that you have choices and more options. Because you can't fight the system, okay? You can't break the system. But what you can do is put yourself and your family in a better position. And the way to do that is, at the end of the day, it's by having more money. The more money you have, the more wealth you have, the more choices and options you have the ability to step away, to say no, to do what you want. And that's all you can do, okay? So, yeah, you got to take advantage of the opportunities. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I agree with that.
Totally agree,
Yeah.
Wendell, and love what you said, David, about Hedera, HBAR, massive ecosystem. And I will share the screen just 1 second here. This is actually the Hedera Council. Do you guys see
Governing
some of the big names there? When I have a look together, Google, LG, Ubisoft. What else you guys recognize there? Boeing, Chainlink.
Yep.
I think
You got
no
Tata
one should be
Communications,
sleeping on
IBM, of course.
They're in stealth. They're in stealth mode.
Yeah.
So they're building in the background, and they're
And this
not
is
marketing.
something. Yeah, this is something I want to throw out there too. So this gentleman that I was listening to, he said, and this crypto bellwether, and this is where, you can see that these people just don't have comprehension, because, he was saying, oh, do you think that these Googles and Microsofts and all these companies, they're just going to wait until the regulation comes in, and then they're just going to pile in with what they're building and behind the scenes? They've already been investing, and massively. Alphabet is the parent company of Google, and it's Alphabet that is on the Hedera Council. Microsoft, we know for a fact, has been partnering up with a number of these ecosystems in a powerful way. They are doing this hand in glove, and they are already taking massive bites, out of this space. And of course, out of the metaverse, which is what a lot of people, you don't hear talked about too much when you think about it. But there are Fortune 500 companies right now investing tens of millions in virtual real estate. So for other iterations of this digital asset space, and if you think social media is something now, wait until you start to see what it comes out with, the innovation and invention that's coming. I think it's going to be mind bending. And I love that you're sharing this, Edo, because a lot of people, they don't understand the connections of the traditional world, the traditional fintech world, international finance, and how it's all been playing a major role in the development and release of this digital asset and this new digital economy. And you only have to peel back the onion just a little bit before you start seeing some things that really are going to tweak your interest. You know, one thing I've encouraged people to do, and I'm going to encourage it again, you just go and do a search on the patent office for the United States, and you type in distributed ledger technology. You just see how many companies in the last 6 months have filed patents in this space and see who's filing the patents. I'm not even going to tell you. You go do it. It will be such an eye opener that it will blow your ever loving mind. And if you think that the future is not going to include this distributed ledger technology, or they're going to wait till they get regulatory clarity, not on your life. They are on the bus, they are on the train, they are on the plane, and they are ready. And boy, I'll tell you, I'm on the rocket ship. I can't wait till it flies, but that's where I think
It will. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would argue we have a tiny window here before
Yeah.
full regulation kicks in.
Go ahead, Ido.
And then the big boys are going to be on board, and we will have the whole Wall Street is coming on board with crypto. So be thankful that we still have 5-10% corrections in a day, because in the future, crypto is going to become pretty much like stocks. So the opportunity for life-changing gains to be over. So we have to capitalize. And the moment is right now. You have to position yourself, because perhaps in 3, 4, maximum 5 years from now, I think the opportunity is going to pass by. And it's like you need to ride this opportunity. What you are going to sell, Vandal?
Oh, I want to talk about potential black swan event or volatility from now going into the elections. So we do know that we're on the verge of a bull run. It's just getting started. We're in the early stages. This is a 4-year cycle that's very predictable. And what we're noticing is the global M2 money supply. When it does increase substantially, that's typically your bull run. Now, interestingly, we monitor this closely, and the growth of the global M2 money supply, which is the major central banks' balance sheets, okay, the growth is slowly increasing. And it's not a coincidence that it's happening right now when they started lowering rates, which is starting to happen globally with major central banks. And it's also not a coincidence that it lines up with the Bitcoin bull run, which is every 4 years, and the synchronized easing cycle, which eventually leads to more money printing and spending in the economy and in the markets. So this is all taking place as we speak right now, and the growth of the money supply is slowly starting to increase, which is just the beginning before we actually have the bull run kick off. Now, I think there could be, I'm not saying there's going to be a major correction or a crash before the next leg up, but it's certainly something that I am open to and believe can happen, because typically Q3 is historically a very poor time of the year for financial markets. That's one. But at the same time, volatility is typical before elections, and we're in an election year. So anything can happen between now and elections. But historically, after rates get cut, money printing starts, it's typically 3 to 6 to even 9 months you see the positive effects in the market, which takes us into 2025, which lines up perfectly with the bull run cycle if you layer them on top of each other. So I could see a correction or a major black swan event happening before. So even possibly next month. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that's a possibility. So it's just something to be aware of. But if that does happen, if a crisis does happen, that's most likely the opportunity where central banks will step in and really stimulate the economy, just like they did in 2020 when we were having repo issues and then the market crashed and they said it was because of you know what.
Yeah, right.
But we were having issues already.
Yeah.
And they stimulated it after the crisis.
Yeah. I mean, right now I agree with you 100%. We have China that is stimulating their market like crazy right now. That's having huge global impacts. I mean, you got traders practically giddy over it. We're also seeing, this drop in rates, by the way, is not the only one that's going to take place. I do believe we're going to see another one this month, My guess is maybe about 25 basis points. Another one in November. I would also say maybe 25. Now, if it's even more than that, that'll be a bigger boon for what you're saying there. But absolutely, like when you're seeing money being pumped into the markets the way in which they are by central banks, which is what we're really talking about, they're not calling it quantitative easing, but let's be honest, that's in fact what it is. That has traditionally impacted the market in a major way. Why? Because of any asset that's being traded against the currency. When the currency is being devalued, obviously the asset price increases because it's going to take more dollars to buy it. Now, what we've seen traditionally is the increase in the asset value outpaces the decrease in the monetary instruments, reduction in value. And so that's where you see these major potential points of appreciation. We've seen that in every prior run and things like that. So I do absolutely agree. And for instance, if you look at all of the indicators, okay, because a lot of people will come out and think, wow, cryptocurrency, you cannot look at these digital assets and bifurcate them from all of the other markets, because there's correlations between them. There's correlations between the S&P, there's correlations with the broader equities market, of course, and reverse correlations when it comes to DXY. There's all of these indicators that are basically showing like where we're headed, in respect to the future. Now, there may be some corrections here that will, in my estimation, like you had just mentioned there, provide opportunity. Like, so for instance, let's say at the end of this week, the 7th comes around, the last day or the midweek or whatever, the SEC comes in and they say, oh yeah, we're going to appeal. I expect that we'll probably see a short-term dip in the price of XRP. Well, for me, I'm looking at that from where the perspective that I had when they dropped the lawsuit. Watched it go from 60 some cents, 50, 60 cents down to 17.48 cents. What an opportunity to get it, because it was only 4 months later, it was a 12x. That is a big time deal, when you're talking traditional markets. So if we see a dip, for us, for our risk tolerance, we've looked at that and said, well, that will say opportunity for us, meet different accumulation goals. I mean, for those people that were really complaining about XRP when it was 40 cents, well, how do you like it now at 60 cents? Do you like paying, your accumulation goals at 60 cents? How are you going to feel when it's like $2, $3, $4? You're going to accumulating at those prices? Now is the opportunity when you see those. Now, does it feel like opportunity? No, of course. Why? Because this space is measured in fear and greed, isn't it? And, we understand that, look, there's no good financial decisions that I know about that are usually fear becomes a good, deal with it, understanding your risk tolerance, but also on the other end, greed. Now, I always throw this out there. Is greed a motivator? Oh, for sure. Greed is a motivator. But guys, I'll tell you what, it's also a deceiver, and they know every little string in the book that they could ever pull. And I share that with people. And this is where I really think what you're saying is true. You're watching the M2 money supply increase because central banks are printing like crazy. That's why. And it's, the stat that I love is where it took maybe 100 years, maybe a little bit more than 100 years for the United States to get 1 trillion in debt. Now it takes less than 100 days for $1 trillion to be added to the debt.
90 days, 100. I know, it's crazy. But any market crash that we could face in the near future, in the long term, it's to any professional or superior investor, that is an opportunity. That's how I see it, and as you guys do. And a good analogy is, for example, if the iPhone you want to buy is on sale when you walk in the store, 70% off, 50% off. And then you say, you know what? I don't like discounts. I'm going to come back tomorrow when they raise the price back to original price. Then I'll buy it because I like getting screwed. That's like waiting and not buying when a market crashes. If you've been eyeing an asset for a long time, why would you do that? Naturally, you want the best price you can get because that sets you up for the highest returns possible. So see it as an opportunity. But nonetheless, I do think there's going to be a lot of volatility between now and elections. So you can just expect the unexpected. And but ultimately, in the long-term duration, this is the beginning of the bull run going into 2025. Now, what comes after that? I have my own personal opinions. I think we're going to have a Great Depression, because right now we're experiencing a lag effect. You know, the yield curve, the high unemployment, the lowering of interest rates. Typically, when the Fed does that, it's because they're starting to notice high unemployment, and they're starting to notice something is breaking in the economy. So they have to react. And what do? They react by lowering rates to ease financial conditions and eventually stimulating the economy with money printing. But they're doing that because they're noticing there's trouble in the economy. So the trouble will be noticed in probably several months or a year from now. And I could see that happening after the bull run, because in 2007, the same thing happened. They reported job employment was great. Everything was looking good in the economy. They fluffed up the reports in 2007. But 1 year later, they came back and revised it in 2008. And that's when we had the financial crisis. So give it a year, the lag effect will ultimately come to the surface, is what I'm saying. And that could be after 2025, after the peak of the bull run for these assets.
Totally agree, Vandel. And quantitative easing is going to come with a high price, increasing
Yeah.
the money supply. Might have a beneficial impact on the short run, but we all know the consequences on the long term. And I think this time it's unprecedented consequences, because we have to add on top of the equation artificial intelligence, which is going to get rid of, I don't want to come with percentages here, but with a high amount of jobs, let's put on these words. And well, that's going to highly affect the economies, not only the US economy, but the global economy. So it's the perfect scenario for a global reset. Then you combine that with a liquidity crisis, which is also on the horizon, and the BRICS dominance, which is increasing on a daily basis, with central banks accumulating gold at unprecedented levels. It's like you have all the ingredients, right, for a global recession, for the collapse of the US dollar as a global reserve currency. And that's why we are highly invested in digital assets that are here to solve this type of problems. In other words, XRP to provide liquidity for the huge liquidity crisis that is approaching. And I am extremely confident that we're going to see a high price for XRP, but I don't like to give timelines here. That's why we have to focus on the long term. Now, we are actually 57 minutes on this live. So any final thoughts? Because we are almost closing 1 hour and we have over 2,600 people that are watching this live. Any final thoughts you would like to share with them, David and Vandel?
Well, the one thing I would say is, like, you know, the thing is, when we come out and we talk about these realities, it's not with any intent to scare people. Obviously, you know, we're in very strange times. I think most of us would agree globally, you know, where, you know, geopolitically, of course, economically, and all that type of stuff. The reason why we come out and share what we do is so that folks can at least get an idea, get a taste for being prepared for what's coming, and start to really get out there and do this for themselves. Like, really get out and, you know, do what we did. You know, at one point we had to go out there and really educate ourselves and learn about what we've seen. Why do we believe what we believe? I mean, there's a rationale behind there. There's apologetic behind there. It's not just, you know, to come out and, oh my goodness. No, it's so that we can know and prepare for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones, and things like that. And one thing I would throw out there is this, guys. Look, you know, we all on this channel right here offer, you know, our own expertise to come out there and encourage people to get out there and get some education and do some coaching and things like that. I know that Verson and Vandel with Black Swan Capitalists do that. I do that. I believe Edo has programs that do that as well. And I'll tell you what, we're not going to have the ability to really provide that the way in which we can now when the bull run really starts to move, because of course we're all going to be focusing on our own situations. And this is where I just encourage people so much. Get out there, whether you use our programs or somebody else's, genuinely put yourself in a position where you understand what you're involved in. Because I know it feels like so many people know, but the reality is so few do. And the reason why it feels like for us that a lot, because it's part of our influence, it's part of what we're aware of, our awareness, right? And so we are surrounded by that. And we think, oh yeah, everyone knows. No, not everybody knows. And this has traditionally happened in every other bull run. We have seen people that have literally rode it all the way up and literally all the way back down, not having any idea whatsoever about, whether to move. And the reason that happens, all the emotional psychology and everything else that goes with that. And this is where just becoming, building, adding to your sophistication, as a digital asset investor is so vitally important. I really encourage that. So I throw that out there for your guys to, give your own options and to think about that. But, I think we're in for some amazing, amazing times. And I do believe that there is tremendous opportunity that this space represents. I'd throw that out there.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Randall, please.
I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, just try not to get shaken out. Okay. If there is some sort of correction or some crash, they want to shake you out. Okay. This is what the market makers do. Do not get shaken out, because if you do, you're really going to regret it, because right now we're at the bottom of the cycle and the beginning of the business cycle. So we're still in the early markup phase, just before things are starting to take off. I saw people talking about trading and selling, 1%, 5%, taking profits. To me, this is insane, because trading, it's an excellent way to, make money and have cash flow if you really commit to it and if you're doing it full time. But if you think a 1 to 5% increase in the price is going to, make a difference, and you just took on now a higher capital gains tax, I mean, this is extremely naive way of thinking, okay? Because we're at the bottom of the cycle still, which means there's only upwards potential right now. It would make no sense in the world from a financial perspective to be trading right now up and down, just slight percentage changes. We're literally about to go much higher, and this includes most of the cryptos out there. And I'm not advising anyone to buy crap, but at least the good ones out there, the big ones, the major cryptocurrencies, and even some micro and large cap cryptocurrencies are going to make significant new all-time highs. It's quite inevitable, in my opinion. So yeah, just don't get shaken out. Hold on, be smart, and like David said, have an exit strategy and a plan. Because the last thing you want to be doing is holding after we're leaving the top of the bull market and going into the markdown and distribution phase, and being stuck just holding things forever. You want to capitalize and take advantage of these market cycles. It doesn't mean sell everything you got, but be strategic. Have a portion that you plan to sell with because you understand these markets, and have a portion that you plan on holding long term. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Vandel. My final message, I saw someone asking if we read the comments. Yes, we do read the comments. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comments where are you based on. So it also helps us with the algorithm, and we can ultimately reach more people. We are very thankful for that. Have almost 3,000 people, and then thousands of people that are going to watch this repetition. So we appreciate you. And I think my final message is really pay attention to who are you listening to, because I see a lot of people are just losing it. I have seen a lot of negativity. I have seen a lot of people losing emotional control. And you don't want to hear these people. These people are actually losing it, and it's just a process of natural selection. Not everyone's going to make it. I'm sorry to inform that, but that's the reality. That's the harsh reality. A lot of people are going to be left behind because they lack the emotional control. So be very careful who are you actually listening to. And we're going to see you here next week for the turning point. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Anything else, David Vandel, or can I close it?
No, thanks,
Yeah,
guys. Really
best
appreciate
of
you.
luck to everybody.
Yeah.
And last message, please be aware with scammers. You're not going to reach anyone. Also, very often they're going to reply to your comments on YouTube, and they would come with very elaborated methods. On my Twitter, there's like hundreds of fake accounts. Everyone texts me on a weekly basis, so please don't send any funds. Our only accounts are the ones linked to the streaming and the verified accounts on X. So thank you, everyone, and we're going to see you Monday.
See you guys.